Talk of the Town is up and running in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, USA. I'm Scott Montesano, and this is where the Chippewa Valley comes to talk. Let me be, hopefully, the last person to welcome you into 2026. We're beyond the statute of limitations when it comes to wishing people a happy new year. I have a very quick cutoff with wishing a happy new year. I say until when you have it like this, when it falls on a Wednesday or a Thursday or a Friday, I always give it until the end of the following weekend. Same with your Christmas lights. You don't have to necessarily take down your lights. You don't have to necessarily take down the tree. But you better not be turning the lights on. The lights better not be twinkling outside. Let's all just put our heads down and get through the miserable month of January together. This is... We can hem and haw. We can find the bright spots in the month of January because they do exist. But this is the most miserable pound-for-pound month that there is. But you and I will get through it together, and we have our first show of the 2026 calendar, and we got a lot to get to. Have not spoken to you in a couple of weeks. Hopefully you had yourself an outstanding holiday season. You got what you wanted. Your gifts that you got other people hit the right marks. May you be playing with your new toys. May, if you have young kids in the family, whether they are yours or their grandkids or their nieces and nephews, may you have seen the excitement in their voices. May you have eaten all that you wanted. And as you've stepped on the scale here in early January, yeah, you put some pounds on, but it's not something you can't overcome. So again, we got lots to get to. There was some stuff that broke just after we were done that I do want to circle back on. One of the best parts about the first show after the holidays is that there usually are some things that have happened during the holidays, but it's that first week back that stuff tends to really pop. And you're seeing a flurry of some news. You're seeing a flurry of announcements. One of the festival grounds in the area just announced a summer lineup for this year. Well, I think it's the EDM show that they did. So this is a big time for announcements this upcoming week. We begin with this, though. Obviously on Tuesday when we're doing the show live, and hello to those watching live, but I know most get it via the podcast. But on Tuesday, we had a skating rink here in the Chippewa Valley. Skating rink, absolute skating rink. Schools closed. I think most people stayed home. But as we learned Monday night and was further reported on Tuesday, not the only ice in the area. Ice agent activity in Eau Claire, and no word on specifics. Haven't seen anything come through as to where specifically ICE agents are. It has been confirmed that there is ICE agent activity going on here in Eau Claire and around by various leaders, by the sheriff's departments, but nothing has even trickled out as far as I've seen, even online, of photos of anything. You're not even seeing protests because, and this is as an aside, remember, most people, when you have these protests, these No Kings rallies, for instance, they never take place in bad weather. They take place in great weather. I've said there's a little bit something that is, people are very passionate when they protest against something, and they have very real reasons as to why they're protesting, and it means something to them. However, 90% of the people that are protesting they don't feel so strongly that they're going to protest in bad weather. There is a segment that would, and I give them a tremendous tip of the cap. If somebody's out protesting today in the ice, the actual weather ice, tip of the cap tap to you. It's easy to protest when it's 85 degrees. It's a whole other thing to protest when it's bad weather, but I digress on that. We both TV stations have covered this, that there's ICE agent activity, but nothing as far as anybody seeing anything, even all the comments you're seeing on EAU and QOW. Because I went to the comments to see if somebody had seen something or anything, and it's just everybody spouting back and forth in their various corners. This should not be surprising to anybody that there is ICE agent activity in Eau Claire, and frankly, you're probably going to see it a lot more in western Wisconsin in the coming days and weeks. Not surprising. We said on this program just about 2 months ago, you were hearing a lot more ads in local media asking, inviting people to apply to join ICE. They were beefing up the employment numbers in this area. And shocker, we are in this country and bound to the same things happening elsewhere. So the fact that you saw it going on 5 states away doesn't necessarily mean it was never going to happen here. So it is now here where there is ICE agent activity. People can have their opinion on all sides of this. They absolutely can. What I do not want, are those who say they openly support and celebrate this. Because you have very real reasons. There's a lot of justifiable reasons as to what is going on. And there are reasons to be against it. What I don't want are those who openly support and celebrate this. They're on social media saying that they are all up in front with a red hat going, yes, deport everybody. But all of a sudden they get quiet when it happens to those they actually live with. Hey, that person down the street, why are they taking them away? I've known that person for years. They're a good person. What do they do? Wait a second. Don't all of a sudden, the fact that it's actually happening with your neighbors, it's happening maybe to people that your kids know or that a friend of a friend knows, don't all of a sudden start to back away from this. Okay? It's all, and conversely, if you're somebody that has been 100% against this and you want to be one of the people that's got the whistle on the corner and you're warning people and all of that, here's your chance as well. Don't back away now that it's in front of you. It's very easy to be passionate online. Now it's right here. How will you act now that it's right here? And another thing, and you see this a lot in the comments, I love how people try to get cute in the comments when we're talking about immigration, immigrants, and legal immigrants and illegal immigrants. And people try to get cute and they say, well, unless and it's usually some middle-aged woman, all right, some middle-aged woman that makes this comment. Well, unless you're a Native American, then you too are an immigrant. Yeah, and well, if you really want to go into the weeds, many researchers believe there is no such thing as a Native American, and that human life migrated to this continent via where Russia and Alaska were once connected. Okay. Yes, we're all immigrants. All right? Even the Native Americans, you can make an argument, were immigrants to this physical plot of land. What I'm saying is don't try to be cute when you're in this. We already are in a deep conversation and argument to begin with. You're not adding levity. That's not what you're trying to do. You're not just, and you're not even trying to troll. The people that are doing this are trying to act like they're the smartest person there, and you kind of laugh at them. It's like the nerd. It's like when we were in high school. You and I were cool. And by the way, I was very smart too. So just because you're cool doesn't mean you weren't smart either. But we wanted to go to the mall. None of us had a car, no access to a car, but maybe that nerd had access to a car. And we're like, all right, the nerd's like, I'll drive you. All right, cool. And then as you're going along, the nerd's driving you to the mall, and you let the nerd hang around. And the nerd once in a while will try to get involved in the conversation, and you'll all look at each other like, what the hell you talking about? And you'll kind of acknowledge and smile at him and maybe laugh. at 1 out of every 7 of the things that they say, so they feel like they're a part of it. That's what you sound like when you throw out there in these conversations, well, nobody here is unless you're of Native American descent, we're all immigrants. Come on. Stop with that. You aren't adding to the conversation, and you're not adding to the conversation. And that's a whole other discussion. And by the way, our own background and history in this country of how Native Americans are treated and how many of our ancestors came over and how they treated Native Americans. It's a very awkward, very messy thing that the more and more you and I learn over how things happen, there really aren't many silver linings. You kind of turn away in disgust. It's like looking at a family having a meltdown in a bowling alley. You're like, oh, God. Oh, God. All right? So, yeah, it's a whole other conversation. Okay. If you are a regular listener to Eau Claire Hometown Media, what happened on Monday night in Menominee, well, you already knew was going to happen in all likelihood a few weeks ago, thanks to our Coffee at the Cottage podcast. Mayor Randy Knack guest on the latest Coffee at the Cottage, and I recommend you go back and listen to that because he goes in depth as to what ultimately happened last night in Menominee, where the city council accepted the proposal to establish guidelines and zoning as it pertains to data centers. We're not going to go into all the details with it because, again, I say go back and listen to Coffee at the Cottage. But as you and I know, it's been a big discussion point, the proposed data center in Menominee and the pause it was put on. And part of the issue is that there is no such thing as specific guidelines and zoning for such a thing. So you're going off of zoning for, say, warehouses, but they're not nearly the same thing. Randy goes into detail about what he was proposing, and it got accepted unanimously last night. Very surprised it got accepted unanimously because it is the debate itself is rather divided in that city council. And what it shows is common sense prevailed, because whether you are for or against the data center, having a layout of requirements and what you want the zoning to be makes a lot of sense. If an Olive Garden wants to open up in a town, yay, Olive Garden. Any restaurant wants to open up in a town, there are commercial zoning laws. A data center, there's nothing that totally exists. People have not already established the requirements that they want going in, which ultimately adds to even more of the arguments that you see. What happened in Menominee, it is malfeasance for, I would say, even Chippewa Falls, but more so Eau Claire, and frankly, maybe the whole county. But the city of Eau Claire better be right on this next, discussing data center specific requirements and zoning. Because that debate of a data center looking to come to Eau Claire will happen in the next 12 to 18 months. It's going to come. It may come before the end of this month, folks. The monies that are possible from these data centers is very real. We know schools are tapped out. Government is tapped out. We know about the levy limits and all of that. There's 2 or 3 more schools right in the metro area that are already having to think of more referendums. The city governments themselves are stretched. The monies that are possible from these data centers is very real money. What I am saying, I'm not necessarily for the data center or against them quite yet. Depending on each situation is different. Get out in front of this with what you want and the requirements. What do you want? Maybe you make it so it's not as desirable. You have all these various requirements that have to be done. And maybe somebody does come forth and say, yep, we'll fulfill it. All right, let's do it then. So the city of Eau Claire better be getting right on this. All right, we move up to Chippewa Falls, where Chippewa Falls had a big announcement during the holidays, and it is carried over, where they now have a new superintendent who is lined up to take over at the end of this school year, replacing Jeffrey Holmes, who is retiring at the end of the school year. Dr. Brad Sarin will be returning to Chippewa Falls as the superintendent. He had been the superintendent for a few years up until about a decade ago and had been serving down in Sun Prairie in the same role. Quickly, obviously, we have a relationship with the Chippewa Falls School District, and I hope they do address what are some legit concerns about this in as many means as they can. It's easy and many times accurate to say those that are questioning a board's decision are misguided, motivated by other causes. However, this decision, as we've learned more, has raised a lot of eyebrows amongst people in Chippewa Falls. There's been a couple of very loud rabble-rousers there in Chippewa Falls. It has gotten media attention, and I think it's something that, as long as you're open and honest and you are talking in as many forms as you can, that's good. Now, Brad Sarin is going to be interviewed by this outlet tomorrow, Tuesday, and that episode's going to tomorrow, Wednesday, and that episode's going to drop on Monday, part of the Chippewa Falls Area Unified School District's monthly podcast. So Brad Sarin will be interviewed, and you'll hear his comments coming up on Monday on Beyond the Bell. Looking forward to that. And obviously, we're going to talk about what his goals are, why do you want to come back in the first place, all that kind of thing. There will be other interviews, no doubt. It will be am I going to be Walter Cronkite in this interview? I will tell you folks, no. I'm going to throw a lot of open-ended questions at Brad. It's still worth your listen, though, because he is going to get the opportunity to say whatever he wants. He can address this. He might not address this. Regardless, I would recommend that he and the board members, many of whom have already spoken, but continue to speak in the next few weeks to other media outlets and answer some hard questions as well. For those, by the way, that are sitting here going, well, why is this decision even controversial, bringing back Brad Sarin? Well, here's the thing. He left Chippewa Falls once before, and while not disliked, people weren't necessarily clamoring for his return to the area. And when he went down the Sun Prairie in the last year or so, he's become tied up in multiple public issues surrounding the Sun Prairie district. Now, he was not, let's be very clear, he was not and is not currently expected to be in any trouble from any of these things that arose. He was the superintendent, but all of the accused actions he had no part of. These are employees of the district, not even his direct employees. These are teachers and whatnot that got involved in various things, and you can go do the research yourself on that. They were personal and they were personnel matters. That being said, he's the leader, rightfully so. He ends up facing the heat. It's a little similar to, say, in the NFL, where if the players are struggling, maybe the coach is not the problem. The coach has been doing a good job, but you're not going to fire all the players. You're going to fire the coach, right? Same kind of thing down there in Sun Prairie. There were players of his, if you will, that were being naughty, and eventually it rises to the top. It led to a vote of no confidence in him by the people in Sun Prairie just a few weeks ago. So they didn't fire him, but the community said, we don't like him. That's what they said. Obviously, the Chippewa Falls Area Unified School District Board did the research on this. They have been very open and honest in that they are very well aware of these things. They had their own legal team take a look to make sure everything is on the up and up, and said, even with these little issues here, he is by far the best option to lead this school district. What I take out of all of it is this. This is what I take out of this. This is not the easy decision. This was a decision that this is what I will commend the board with. If you believe in this guy and you think this guy is by far the best option, the easy choice would have been to go with, well, frankly, the other option was another individual from Sun Prairie, so you would have the same thing. But the easy choice would have been to wipe your hands clear and go, okay, we're maybe going to go with option D or E or F that doesn't come with any baggage. Instead, we're going to go with what we believe to be our option A. There may be some hiccups along the way PR-wise, but everything's on the up and up, and in due time, people will have no fear whatsoever as to the selection we made. I give the board credit. Now, the board has put their necks out there on this, but that's what you have to do as a strong leader sometimes. Will this work out? I think we all should hope it does. You're sadistic if you are hoping it does not work out, so you hope it works out. They made a more difficult choice. They could have made an easy choice. They made the more difficult choice because they believe that is the better option. That is the best option for the district. So we will see how that all plays out. Look forward to meeting Brad with the interview on Wednesday. Continuing on, there was one little thing that popped up while we were gone. Before I get to this last thing, to go back to Chippewa Falls and the Area Unified School District and the selection of the superintendent, there's some similarities. Now, it's still like comparing apples to wrenches, but there's some similarities. The decision that the school board made going with Brad, and the decision that the Eau Claire City Council made going with Stephanie Hirsch with the city manager. Now, we hope that Brad works out a lot better than Stephanie has. But remember, the Eau Claire City, and I said the same thing 3 years ago when they selected Stephanie. The easy choice for the city council members would have been to go with Dave Solberg. He'd been there for 2 years, running in an interim role. People liked him. You knew what you had. As we've come to learn since, he still would have been the better option. That would have been the safe choice. They, at the time, and I remember saying this, I said, all right, the safe choice would have been Dave. You're taking a chance because you believe this is the best option. You're going with Stephanie. And it's on you if it doesn't work out. It's on you if it doesn't work out. All right? We hope it works out, but it's on you if it doesn't. Same kind of thing here in Chippewa Falls. Safe choice would have been to maybe even reopen the search. All right? Would have been maybe reopen the search. But they feel Brad is the best option going forward, and with that, yeah. So, and I end with this too. Whenever we have these types of public decisions that are made, whether it is a city government hiring somebody or whether it's a school board bringing on a superintendent, whether you like or you're 100% against the decision the school board made, you better root for it to work. Because as people, again, have learned in Eau Claire, it's not like they're going to be gone right away anyway if you don't like them. Okay? You better root for them to succeed. Because if you root for it to fail, it's probably going to be 2, 3, 4 years before you get it turned around. You don't want that. You don't want to be able to. I know everybody wants to stand smugly and go, I told you so. You want that opportunity? No, you don't, though. No. You know what you want, especially if you're one of the people that's really against this decision. There's been a couple of very vocal people in Chippewa Falls that have gone and made every comment they can, and they are owed that right. They were very vocal leading up to the decision. One lady in particular, and they are more than in their right to do so. You know what you want right now? And sometimes it's pride. They go, I don't want to work out. Everybody's going to look at me and think I was wrong. No. Nobody's thinking about you. You know what you want if a person that you didn't want hired ends up getting a job? You know what you want? You just want it to be quiet. That's what you want. If they do a good job, you don't have to say anything. People forget it. Nobody's thinking anything or whatever. It's fine. Speaking of being quiet, WEAU, and of all people, Bob Gallagher, with a rather embarrassing moment right after, right in mid-December. And EAU and Gallagher are very lucky that the holiday break snuffed this out. And good job by the chamber. They also didn't let this thing fester too much. But in mid-December, there was an Eggs and Issues event put on by the Eau Claire Chamber. These are morning meetings where people go have breakfast, and they usually hear from a leader, whether it's a government leader, it could be somebody in a high civic position. But people gather and listen to them speak on a topic. I've been to some of these in the past, used to go to the State of the City back in the day when Kerry Kincaid and Dale Peters would put on sort of an Abbott and Costello routine at the old, at the Lismore at the time. You get some runny eggs, you get some burnt toast, and you have some fun while drinking some stale coffee at these things. They're not press conferences. They're not live Q&As. Questions get answered, but they are pre-planned. These are, in many ways, performative things. They are public relation events, and that is understood. People will sometimes answer a hard question or whatnot, but they kind of know that hard question's coming. These are not these are not press conferences. Bob and WEAU know this. However, at the one in mid-December, and you can go back, EAU is the one that covered this. At the one in mid-December, they tried to make a mockery over it. Bob showed up, was not happy certain topics weren't being discussed by the panelist, and tried to, in essence, ambush the event. I've talked to people that were there. Tried to ambush the event. And in many ways, and EAU actually covered the story the exact same way my buddies have said who were there. All right? And it's one of those things that EAU says, yep, we tried to get answers to questions. And my buddies say, yeah, he tried to get answers to questions. It was not the platform to do so. Bob Gallagher kept saying, I want questions answered. People want questions answered. It became awkward at times there. He, in many ways, ambushed the event. My quick take is, why? That's, even when I first saw the story, I don't understand why. Bob isn't what you would call the Walter Cronkite of the area. He's not Tom Brokaw, Bob Gallagher. And WEAU is not the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, NBC News, 60 Minutes. It's not. Is WEAU and Bob trying to make a pivot all of a sudden? Are they trying to make a pivot to, remember the old news magazine show, Hard Copy, usually be on like at 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon? What axe do they have to grind? This was all so odd. Of all things, trying to make a point, I have no clue where this came from. None at all. WEAU and Bob Gallagher, what the heck? They know what these are. These eggs and issues. They're not new. They've been going on for years. I guess there's somebody said, well, EAU was invited to the event. Yeah, so am I. You're not invited as a media person. You're invited as a business. And you can bring your camera and you can interview the person off stage and all that, but you don't become part of the story. It's all so weird. And I get it. Some people will say, well, this is the problem we have now in our country where leaders avoid questions and our leaders don't answer hard questions and all that. And I do get that, folks. And I do think leaders should make themselves more available to answer questions that maybe they have not been fed ahead of time or in a public relations or performative setting. Absolutely. There should be more media encounters. But that's not what this is. So that whole thing in mid-December was very, very odd. And again, if this was a greenhorn reporter, then I'd sit there and go, okay, they just don't understand what these eggs and issues events are. But it was Bob Gallagher. So I have no clue. I have no idea what all stemmed that or anything like that. And talking to people since I got back in the town, people said the whole thing was really weird. There probably somebody upset somebody behind the scenes or whatever, but it was a very odd encounter. And people say, well, the whole what was being discussed at the eggs and issues doesn't even make it, isn't even the point on this. All right. We're back with you on Thursday, and Thursday is going to be a recorded edition of the program, so look forward to talking to you then. On behalf of everyone who made this podcast possible, I'm Scott Monasato saying there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day. Make sure to take advantage of it, and until next time, so long, everybody.